welcome to this very interaction that we have before us. We will be discussing by fiscal transparency and accountability initiative, which is something that we are onboarding as transparency international bank. If you feel like you share, I think we can start with around I'll take one. So I will start. My name is
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mubarak. I'm a student from the university. Good morning, everyone. I'm Gary from Good morning. My name is Darius. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Emmanuel Santo. I'm the Principal Planning and Management Officer for Office of Organization. My name is Good morning. I'm Charles Guru from
Good morning, everyone. I'm Valia Nunde from TIP.
we also have a colleague there, Mr. Thomas, is working for public finance management coordinator for TIZ. So once again, thank you so much for making time for this important interaction. We know every year people are busy. Also like to speak ourselves because you know it's the UN National Action Day. So your attendance here is highly appreciated. Just to quickly run through our program for today. We have done the arrival and registration, and for colleagues who might join us later, they will find us on our program. We have been opening and welcoming remarks for right to join manager, and we will combine this opening and welcoming remarks from their perspective. After that, we will have and feedback on the aspect of the project and the presentation that will be given by Bright. After that, we will have our head of program summit, who will give a media statement. As you might have seen in the invitation, this is also the official launch of the project in Zambia. That should see us to tea break. Then after tea break, we will come back and Bright to take us into the specifics of construction risk assessment tool, which is part of the project. After presentation on that risk assessment tool, we will have a very short initial focus group discussion, particularly looking at the country context assessment of the risk assessment tool, which will see us into lunch, and then after lunch, we will be going our separate ways to continue our days. So that is the program or the agenda that we have for you today. Before Bright comes, just a short announcement for the conveniences. Please note that when you go out, you will turn to the right and leave it straight on. So I will ask Bright then to come and do the welcome opening remarks.
Let's start from her. Good morning. So first of all, I'd like to welcome you to this meeting on behalf of our executive director, Mr. Education Affairs. We're very honored and excited to honor our invitation at as the meeting has noted, this is partly engagement, what we will do once we have the first step in trade, we will allow the media to exclude them and so let me start with the presentation which provides context so you know what we're discussing. Okay, so I'd like to present all the fiscal transparency initiative. Of course, finding it a bit tricky to use the word initiative, but anyway, usually as a project. You bear with us. So the outline of my presentation is I'll go through a background just to understand the context and issues we are looking at. Then I will give the overview of the project, what the project entails, and what the project do. I'll go through the purpose and the goal of the project objectives, project strategies, and then begin activities of the project, and then the basic feedback. So feedback is the tool that as a project. I will come back as you have seen on the agenda to run through short discussion of the tool itself, so that you know what the tool is all about, and then we have the focus discussion. So let me start with some key concepts around this issue. So the number of ways that move around this issue. So I'll start with public financial management, which I think is very important for everyone. So this refers to the mechanisms through which public resources are collected, allocated, spent, and accounted for. So PFM is a broader system. Here, it's everything to do with how government manages its finances. So in terms of revenue collection, in terms of allocation of that revenue, through budgeting, in terms of spending, as well as the auditing aspect, the accounting for that. So all of that is called public financial management. So PFM processes comprise the whole budget cycle, that's what I was explaining, including public procurement, audit practices, revenue collection, all of that PFM. So in this particular cycle, I'll be showing you very soon the subset of the different issues that we are in context. Then public investment management, which is going a bit into the PFM process. This is part of the broader PFM system and refers to spending by the state on the creation of long-term assets, such as roads, buildings, bridges, human capital, research and development. So the key distinguishing factor with public investment management is that here now we're talking about long-term assets. So the government is spending on long-term assets. This is distinct from what we call current expenditure, which is spending that does not create fixed long-term assets. So if you are spending just, for example, on social assets, that's kind of expenditure. So we are not creating any long-term assets. So it's not public investment. So already just note that again, public investment management is a sub-component of public financial, which is broader than public investment. I hope that is clear so far. I hope that you get. Are we? Okay. public infrastructure management, which is another sub-component. So this refers to prudent management of public physical or fixed capital assets. It excludes long-term spending on human capital, education, health, job training, research and development, and digital infrastructure. So if you are now more focused, public investment management, yes, but now more focused on actual physical fixed capital assets and removing the intangible assets, if you want to call it, which is human capital, which again spend on human capital as well, and that is public investment management, but it is not public infrastructure. Now we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about physical fixed capital, right? So I think it's important to just get the context of where we are in terms of this discussion. So as you can see on the right side, that's what I was trying to explain. We have public finance management, which is broader than the public investment management, and then we have a sub-component, which is public infrastructure. So again, another way of looking at it, when we are talking about public infrastructure management, we are actually looking at everything. Okay? Because public infrastructure management, if you look at issues to do with the legal policy environment, you will not find strategies or policies which are just for public infrastructure management. Of course, you may find funds, but the broader policy environment which will guide public infrastructure management will be under public investment or even public financial management. In terms of the broader laws, CFM laws, we all apply to the issue of public infrastructure management. So when we are talking about public infrastructure management, we are actually referring to all of these issues and things. I think that is also important to know. So why is this important? Now we observe. So the key issue, just going back there, we are looking at the project focus with public infrastructure. Okay, that is where the project rests, and that is the focus. So if we border on issues with FTAI, all of these. So the importance of public infrastructure. Public infrastructure is very, very important for a country. So run through some of the key issues you should know as we look at the issue of public infrastructure. Number one, growth and development. The major reason why we need to focus on this, because public infrastructure is a key driver to inclusive economic growth and the reduction of inequalities. So obviously we know roads, bridges, railways, airports connect and electricity connect markets, they facilitate production and trade and create economic opportunities for work and education. So if the country grows, we actually need to have public infrastructure, growth and development. I also looked at the SDGs. So achieving SDGs, 3 of the 17 SDGs directly related to infrastructure, which is one on water sanitation and green, then energy SDG number 7, and then one specific on infrastructure and digitalization, SDG number 9. So all of these relate to the issue of public infrastructure. So we need public infrastructure. So one, if you want to spur economic growth, to stimulate growth in the country, you need public infrastructure. Right? So that is number 3, for service delivery. So it's not, we just don't want infrastructure for the sake of infrastructure. Looking beautiful. The linkage is that infrastructure development has positive spillovers on service delivery, because every economic and social sector requires good infrastructure for service delivery. So again, public infrastructure is critical because it is a source for effective service delivery. And this is what I'm saying. If a country has hospitals that have been constructed, then people can go and access the service from those hospitals. The country has a very good road network, the transportation and the service it can provide, people can then live and go. So all of those are critical because public infrastructure is then what makes it possible for us to benefit service delivery. The last one is revenue growth, which is also important. Infrastructure is also essential in enlarging a country's revenue base and meeting spending needs. So when you have the public investing or in this case, the government was based in infrastructure, that public infrastructure growth usually crowds in public investment. So, and let me try to explain it here. So, if the government decides to construct the road, let's say it's like a Gola carriage road. So it's a big road project that will construct. What that will do, it will open up for more investment, right? Because we now fast the transportation, then it means that companies can decide to set up industries around the road close by because they know that it's easy for them now to be able to transport their goods. So as you know, if the government decides to construct the road in a residential area, if it does it means that private sector can now put up lodges, put up all kinds of things. So it usually crowds in private investment. So that is another benefit. This leads to economic growth because it also leads to higher economic growth. Because as bigger the economy, the more the government can tax. Okay. I hope we are together so far. A bit of economics, yes, but I hope we can that. Public infrastructure management. So what is really important when it comes to this issue? What are some of the critical things that are on there? And you ask yourself why the NTI is interested in this. The first one is indebtedness. Okay, so when the wrong infrastructure projects are undertaken, governments can fall into debt stress with high foreign interest payments, poor projects, and with little money left to pay for healthcare, social services, and climate action. If you remember, if you were looking, if you were done maybe the past 5 years or so, you were doing some market analysis, you were able to see as debt accumulated, we had interest payments which were going higher, then we had social sector crowding out. With government resources that moved from the social sector to pay off the debt. That is the problem with debt. The country can become indebted if we don't manage our public infrastructure. So if we don't do it well, we end up having debt. And I'll shortly look at the case of Zambia, which is the next part of the presentation, so that we can reflect on what happened in the Zambian case, and then we can see how this affects. The second issue is just wastage of resources, and we are interested in this aspect as well. I'm glad the author here. So when we talk about resources, what way do they use? The author like to use that. So what way is that? What was the resources which are just wasted and can benefit from them? What was the I think there was a year throughout the entire report. So something of concern. So this is public resources that have been used somewhere, and there's no benefit that will be derived from the public. So that is wastage of resources. How does this happen? So when appraisal processes, lending agreements and are not transparent, the procurement of large public infrastructure projects is not open and competitive, there is an increased risk of public infrastructure projects ending in wasted resources. A good example I will give is, let's say the country has got $2 billion, which they want to spend on schools across the entire country. What will happen if there is poor public infrastructure management is that maybe about 20 or 30 projects will start at the same time. And the $5 billion will be spread across all the different projects. And then what happens is after 2 or 3 years, all the schools are different levels of competition. One at 30%, 5%, 40%, 15%, and then the $5 billion is done. Is that a good use of public resources? The issue is here that all of those schools, no one can benefit from them. But money is sitting in those schools. Now imagine how many projects are across the entire country. There's poor public infrastructure management. You can have thousands of projects that are stored in the entire country, which is billions of dollars sitting in those projects, but no one is benefiting from those projects. Then there is a change of government, change of regime, and the new regime says we will complete only those that are What happens to the rest? What happens to the resources that is in all of those projects? Okay, so that is a very mistake. Because to step back, we could have used that $5 billion or 5 billion funds to construct maybe 10 schools instead of starting 20. And those schools will be complete, and children will be going to those particular schools and they'll be benefiting from it. So that is the wastage of resources we're talking about here. Because the government, the public actually will not derive benefit if there is poor management of our infrastructure. The last cause of concern is corruption, of course. So the infrastructure sector deals with resources, we already know that. So it also has what we call elevated political interests. So here, let me try to explain a little bit. If you talk about political promises, very easy to promise people that you're going to be able to construct things. And people are very happy when they hear that you're going to construct. They hear that you give them a new hospital, a new maternity, you give them a new school, you give them a new road. People are very happy. So there is that political interest attached to public infrastructure. And so it can also then lead to abuse, okay, and corruption. Because of that elevated interest. Then coupled with the fact that you're dealing with huge resources, it's a very high risk. Let's reflect back on Zambia's case and see what happens in the case of Zambia. I think we're reflecting back over the past decade or so, so from about 2016 or so all the way up to now, just to see what trends or what issues we observed over that time. So first of all, so recent projects, Zambia, of course, include the Lusaka Tower project, costed initially at $1.2 billion US, later revised to $600 million. What is the reason for such conservation cost? That is your guess, my guess as well, right? Something is happening, right, behind the scenes. So, but that is one of the principles that we have, is that the things that it's hard to come up with very clear figures of how much this would actually cost. So we have a situation where costings are somewhat contradictory. That is one point. Second is that there seems to be a shift in the model, and we're observing this most recently. So of course the financing models vary considerably when we talk about public infrastructure. So in comparison, multilateral agencies and development funds finance the Kariba Dam rehabilitation project, while local pension funds and private sector players are funding the Lusaka Tower road expansion project through public-private partnership. So, and we have heard a number of other roads coming up, and they are saying we're using the 50. What is the implication of this? What are the implications in terms of handing over that asset, funding it, so how many years, what are the implications of it? All of those are discussions that we have to engage the public in, so that they know what they do. The biggest challenge again is transparency around all of these contracts. What agreements are entered, and then what periods, even just to know what period, what rates of charging over that period to recover the money. Most of that is not transparent. Number three, governance weaknesses. We also take note of governance weaknesses in 2017. Public investment management assessment was conducted by the IMF. It uncovered several weaknesses, including lack of investment project appraisal for domestically financed projects, as well as the absence of the central screening process and the feasibility studies, among other weaknesses. So the report which highlighted a number of governance weaknesses. In the latest strategy, which I will share very soon, public investment management strategy that the government developed, they take note that government has worked on at least 3 of those governance. There has been some progress in terms of addressing those. But another issue here that we want to highlight is this particular report. We are not so sure why this report is not publicly available. I don't know if it is now. Last time we checked, this report seems to be again a secret report. well, we need to understand what these governance are. This particular report seems to not. Number four, strength debt growth relationship, 2016-2021. Here we observe a very strange relationship between accumulation of public debt and economic growth. So the external public debt stock increased from about $1 billion in 2016 to $14 billion by the end of 2022, primarily due to the contraction of euro bonds in 2014 amounting to $3 billion, as well as private banks and supplier credit loans, with the vast majority linked to failed public investment projects. During this period, economic growth is taking place. So while we talk about the benefits of public investment and also public infrastructure, which is fair economic growth, stimulate growth, what we observe during this period is a period of rapid debt accumulation, which is not coupled with growth for a company like data. So you ask yourself the question, what was really happening during this particular period? Part of the answer, I know I think looking at one of the reports that the World Bank did on this particular period, of course, they do not factor in the effects of corruption. They focus mostly on the macroeconomic effects. But I think corruption is a bigger issue. And with, if you reference the IMF governance that was report, which is one of the reference on the governance weaknesses, you see that between 2016 and 2021, the report says corruption became infected and institutionalized, as financial resources invested in infrastructure projects provided avenues for political patronage and opportunities, leading to the inflated costs of numerous high-profile tenders and construction projects. So part of the money that we're talking about in terms of rapid debt accumulation, according to an IMF report, during the same period, that there was a significant leakage of money because of corruption. Okay. So when there's corruption in public infrastructure management, public investment management, you have this strange relationship between debt and growth, where you accumulate debt and you're supposed to put this debt on projects, and then you expect to stimulate growth in the economy, but you don't see the growth because part of that money you contracted as debt leaks out because of corrupt activity. Now what we have is a new public investment management policy framework, and we commend the government for developing this policy framework. More recently, of course, the government recently developed public investment management guidelines, a general appraisal manual for public investment projects, and public investment projects risk management guidelines as tools to guide the preparation and appraisal of public investment projects. So all of this take to the new policy framework, and then further, Zambia has developed its first national public investment management strategy. The fact that this is the first time, this is a lot of questions, right? That this is the first time we now have a strategy of public investment management. Because this is an area that has been of great concern over the past years. I want to also note that the public investment management strategy quite comprehensive, and I want to note a few things in the strategy in terms of the aims. So the public investment management strategy aims to address public investment management weaknesses by creating a investment policy and legislative framework. So this should trigger amendments of different laws, robust coordination of governance mechanisms, clear methodological procedures and processes, enhancing capacities and developing public investment management information. I'll take a note there. Public investment management information system. This is highly critical. If you ask yourself, does the government have the ability right now to track all the public investment activities that are happening? This may be a problem because we don't have a public investment management system. It doesn't develop the research that has been developed. But that's the job of this public investment management, information system, to track all the different infrastructure projects that are ongoing and that are also in operation. Remember, it's not another issue of rehabilitation. of that infrastructure. So you need to know where all the and so as you can also be able to take that infrastructure. Especially when there's a change of government, what happens in terms of making sure that you take your the critical note on the strategy is that beyond developing this strategy and the very impressive new policy framework, it's yet to be seen how the new regime will address the public investment challenges that we have discussed. And hence, this project wants to contribute to this particular step. So now we move on to the project overview. What is the project do? So this project will raise awareness among citizens of the impact of poor investment decisions and devise strategies for stakeholders to hold government accountable for infrastructure investment decisions and improve national policy framework. So what we want to do now is shine this culture in the eyes of the public, because the public may not even know that they have the reason why they're not having the good health services they should have because there's poor infrastructure. The public may not know the reason why they are facing a high tax rate right now because of the rapid taxation, because most of the debt money was not well invested in public infrastructure, so they don't have growth. So there are all of those discussions that we need to share with the public. So we want to focus on raising awareness among the project developed TI national chapters capacity and technical knowledge of infrastructure project selection and public investment management processes, support national civil society awareness raising campaigns, and advocate at the national level for increased accountability of infrastructure investment. Just to put a note there that so I will explain how the project is being implemented because it's a multi-country project. But when you look at the second bullet point, it's talking about the fact that people like myself, national chapters, transparency international chapters, we have been going through this capacity development to understand the issues around this area so that we can be able to raise awareness and engage and advocate for changes that are required. So a bit of project overview, just some notes. So in terms of implementation or implementing agency, Transparency International Australia or TIA is implemented in partnership with TI chapters in Zambia, Indonesia, Kenya, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. So these are the countries that are participating in this multi-country project. I put Zambia as this, obviously. Yeah, in terms of the funding model, it uses the Transparency International Secretariat, which is TIA, or TIS, which is our mother network organization, has a sub-grant, fixed amount sub-grant agreement with TI Australia, and then TI Australia then supervises from TI chapters, which are mentioned there. The implementation period is quite short for this particular project. It started in August, though we are not sure now because there's some background work we are doing, and then we will end in March. So you have more escalated discussions that will come forth in terms of engaging the public and start what's the purpose of this particular project? So it's to enhance transparency, accountability, and citizen oversight in infrastructure project selection and management using the INFRAS 2. Again, I'll just say INFRAS 2. Bear with me because I have another presentation. It's not really a presentation discussion. I'm going to bit of some details on the INFRAS 2 so that you see how it is. So essentially what we're saying is the purpose of this project is to generate some level of transparency and accountability and also citizen oversight, bringing the system in terms of oversight in this area, and we are using the goal PIM public investment management processes are comprehensive, transparent, and accountable, leading to infrastructure projects maximizing benefits for the developing countries. So this goal, of course, is multi-country. So we are hoping that we can have comprehensive, transparent, and accountable systems for all of these development. So I've broken down now the specific objectives of the project. One is to promote integrity in infrastructure governance by identifying and mitigating corruption risks at the early stages of project. Let me pause and ask a question here. Maybe we can have a little bit of discussion because I've spoken for too long. Who decides in this country that we should have a road going through gardens? Who decides? Who makes that decision? You know? Who makes the decision to say we should construct a road in gardens of a tarred road? Who makes it? Yes? Anyone? The question? Yes.
The people.
The people. Which people?
Please.
He says they are community code. Anyone else? Who decides? Yes.
The local.
Okay. Last person before I ask my follow-up question. Last person? Anyone else? Okay. No one wants to try the question. I hope it's not political. Okay, my follow-up question. So what happens when it appears that the road has been constructed to target someone's house? What does that tell you about the problem?
Yeah, like self reading, just self yeah, you are using authority to try get the city. You are using the authority to cover. So there are things that people will try to construct the road going to their places. Yeah.
So that's something of the So this is an area where integrity, I was talking about the first promoting, where integrity is very important. Because we sit there as a government official and they are discussing road construction and application of roads. We're sitting there and you know your farm. And you know that if a car road passes near your farm, what happens to the value of the farm? Yeah, instant. More than that. Sometimes. So you have that so that is why there's need for it. That is what this project is trying to promote. So promoting integrity in the social government by identifying and mitigating corruption risks at the earliest stages of project. How is the project actually? Is there a conflict of interest in the selection? Number two, strengthening the capacity of civil society and stakeholders to use the infrastructure to monitor public investment projects. So that is the aspect of capacity building. Then number three is generating evidence. So everything we're talking about, is there a problem? Is there a conflict of interest? Is there corruption risk? We need evidence. You can't just tell people that there's corruption risk in this particular area without evidence. So the project will focus on generating evidence, which is actually the main component of the project. So generating evidence and policy recommendations to improve public investment management framework, generate the evidence and use that to make information. That is the third objective. The last, to promote transparency and public participation in decision making for large-scale infrastructure projects. Again, I'll ask the question: who decides? In that process, there should be public participation. And as it says, community committees, one development committee, we want to interrogate that process. How do they select? How do they come up with the infrastructure projects to invest public money into? Okay, so there is need for public participation. But public participation cannot be there unless it is transparent. Okay? It's a function of transparency. Because the public are not participating what they don't understand. So you need to share the information, you need to send the information, and you need to generate the evidence so that you can use to advocate and have public participation. In terms of the strategies, we have the first strategy as the social audit of infrastructure projects. So each project conducts pilot assessment of selected projects using the IFAS tool and generates an action report which shows the corruption risks and vulnerabilities. The National Civil Society Awareness Campaigns engage National Civil Society, launch different community campaigns to experiment finding and promote citizen engagement. Then strategy number 3 is capacity against security, that is participating in regional trainings and knowledge exchange workshops led by CRS. So across the different countries. The main activities that conclude is the inception workshop, which was a 3-day meeting with the research team to develop the inception report and analyze research tools and the methodology. This has already been done, so we have already held the inception workshop, which includes up to 2 more comprehensively. So what is ongoing now is a case study research, conducting a comprehensive analysis of the public investment management in Zambia using the IFAS framework. So conduct that study. Once we have the evidence, we move on to capacity building training. That is, we keep civil society actors with skills to apply the IFAS tool and conduct social audits themselves. And then stakeholder engagement, that is now at policy level, engage policymakers, civil society, and private sector actors through consultative forums. And then we also engage the public through awareness and advocacy, that is run social media and public campaigns, and findings, and raise awareness in infrastructure corruption risks. So that is the structure of the project and the activities. I'll end by just highlighting the benefits of IFAS. I know this is strange because I've been explained what IFAS is, talking about the benefits. Just for you to take note that this tool that we are using, which is the corruption vulnerability assessment tool for infrastructure projects, it supports the implementation of the Zambia's national public investment management strategy. Okay, so we want to contribute to that so that as the strategy is being implemented, we can then reflect to see where the risks are and then tailor-make some of the adjustments. Integrate corruption risk assessment in project appraisal and decision-making process. So when we are looking at appraising projects, in terms of selecting which projects are supposed to be implemented, we also need to have on the back of our minds that there is need for corruption risk assessment. Some projects are going to be more corruption. Then number 3, strengthen alignment between public investment management frameworks and broader anti-corruption efforts. It's bringing the discussion about corruption into the discussion of public investment management. So it should be seen. I've already shown you that in a case where you do public infrastructure investments, like the period I was referring to, you can have data accumulation and then you have corruption coming down to interfere in that process. People say no. So corruption cannot be seen to be isolated from the public infrastructure discussion. Lastly, it promotes sustainable development financing by ensuring infrastructure funds are efficiently and ethically used. So the issue of integrity and efficiency, reducing wastage, that is what this tool is bringing on the table. So I hope you are looking forward to going through the tool, and that marks the end of my speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I know that you probably have a number of questions, but I will propose a slight adjustment on the agenda that we go into the reading of the media statement, which will mark the launch, and then after that we can have a question and answer session. Yes? Okay. In that case, I would like to invite our head of program, Mr. Raymond Mutale, who will give a statement to officially launch the project in Zambia. Mr. Mutale, please.
listening to write, give an overview of the project, just wondering whether it's necessary to even read this statement. That you have just need to read. And she says I'm indisciplined sometimes. I don't follow the script. I'll try as much as possible to script. Ladies and gentlemen, Transparency International Zambia acknowledges the critical role that public investment and infrastructure play in advancing Zambia's social and economic progress. When planned, financed, and implemented responsibly, infrastructure has the potential to transform communities, expand access to essential services, and support long-term national growth. Over the past decade, Zambia has made significant investment in roads, energy, housing, health facilities, educational facilities, and other public infrastructure projects. However, various assessments, including the Zambia Public Investment Management Assessment, (IMA), have shown that weaknesses in public investment governance have reduced the effectiveness of these investments. Gaps in project appraisal, feasibility studies, procurement oversight, and long-term value for money analysis have sometimes led to delays, cost escalations, and lower than expected returns on public investment. TIZ, however, commends the government of the Republic of Zambia for taking steps to address these challenges. The introduction of key reforms such as the development of the public investment management guidelines, the appraisal manual, risk management guidelines, and the first national public investment management strategy represents meaningful progress towards strengthening transparency, accountability, and efficiency in public investment management. These reforms offer an opportunity to ensure that future infrastructure investments are evidence-based, fiscally sustainable, and aligned with national development priorities. To complement these national efforts, Transparency International Zambia, working in partnership with Transparency International Australia, under the Fiscal Transparency and Accountability Initiative, FTAI, we are undertaking a focused assessment of corruption risks in public infrastructure governance. This includes applying the infrastructure corruption risk assessment to identify vulnerabilities in project selection, procurement, and implementation across selected infrastructure projects, including those financed through public sector partnerships. The project aims to do the following: one, support government agencies with objective and evidence-based insights on corruption risks within the public investment process, strengthen civil society and community monitoring of high-impact projects. Remember, writers the question, who determines these projects and where they should be placed? I think that is important, and to provide opportunities for communities to have a role or a voice in high-impact projects. Number three, generate country and agency level corruption risk profiles that can guide policy improvements. Number four, promote responsible and transparent infrastructure investment practices that reinforce value for money and public confidence. Number five, contribute to broader reforms that enhance Zambia's economic governance, fiscal accountability, and public sector integrity. TIZ believes that strong public investment management cornerstone of economic resilience. Well-governed infrastructure supports national development, but also helps with waste, inefficiency, and governance failures that can undermine public trust. As such, we remain committed to constructive engagement with government and other stakeholders, civil society organizations, development agencies, and indeed communities across Zambia. Going forward, FTAI will continue working to ensure that Zambia's infrastructure investments deliver maximum public benefit and are taken with integrity and contribute to sustainable, inclusive development. Those both with few remarks, we declare the FTAI project. No. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those. As indicated, you now have a question and answer session, right? Presentation as well as as some people put it down, so I'm anticipating some questions for clarification, some comments. Just to know that for those who will need the presentation next day, I'm going to send it. So any questions or comments? Yes, thank you for bringing that.
Moment I want to get one that got the education side where state that the concession is I would like to try that for the with some sorry for that. That is a document. That's the people that are not after that they have got the right to assess that question. So during the actually during the negotiation, the government informed the government about the sectoral government. Only two people about according to the law they are supposed to be about 10 from different employees from the Ministry of Justice and the contracting authorities, if it's for the road, from RDA, lawyers from RDA, financial experts from there, then they need the private party to negotiate. There is no politician so and there are people from the president among the government. So when they negotiate with those private parties, like for instance, the dollar, they are negotiating with. So after the concession agreement is finalized, taken to the appointed to go to see all the process where they do that some of the processes are not doing well on the government side. They ask the government to go back and negotiate. So when now it comes to signing that negotiation agreement, it is open to negotiate, it is open to the public. Sometimes they even invite the public to like what something like that. So those positions are they are about 7 in one it goes to Anthony Tenning, the other one goes to contracting authority, which is the other one, if it is public-private project, comes to our office under the director general. The other one goes to the private thing. So if anyone is interested to see what is contained in that document, they are free to go to Anthony the contracting authority of our office so that they can see what is there in the concession agreement.
Thank you so much for that very important clarification. I'm sure we'll make some adjustments to the presentation, but also as we enter the focus group discussion, I think that information will become very, very relevant to the country context. Before I allow Brian maybe to respond or comment, any other questions or observations? So there's someone behind you and then we'll get to you. Yes,
Thank you very much for that presentation, Bryce, and for this initiative sharing. Perhaps for me, my question would be whether or not you consider the climate module to the assessment. I know now the FEMA has moved to, there are also elements of climate FEMA, FEMA. So I was wondering if the climate aspect is also feature role in this project. As we know, Zambia is not free from weather-related or climate-related shocks, be it floods, droughts, and infrastructure has to respond to those aspects of climate shock. So it would be, I think, important to also consider the angle of the climate aspect to infrastructure.
All right, thank you once again, Bright, for that enlightening presentation, and of course from Raymond as well, sitting it up with that media statement. So from the perspective of Office of the Auditor General, and obviously, as you might be aware, I think our language is broadly focused on enhancing transparency and of course accountability. So when Bright was making a presentation touching on key infrastructure development projects and also the fiscal space, how then do we ensure that we create this lasting partnership between transparent institutions such as Auditor General and of course TIZ? So from that risk assessment toolkit that you had highlighted or mentioned, at Auditor General, we have a provision of special audits, which we call value for money audits. They are called performance audits. I know mainly people are focused on the financial audits, the main report. But with performance audits, these are more or less like research-based studies where we get now to measure the impact and also assess the value for money in terms of effectiveness, efficiency, and also economy. So based on those risks, there is a window that, for instance, TIZ could write to the Auditor General to request to say that based on our risk assessment, we feel like there are these areas in terms of private partnership, in terms of infrastructure development, that we feel like maybe a performance audit or a forensic audit or a special audit could really help. And with our resource availability, and of course, when TIZ comes in, that will be mainly from public outcry and well-researched risk portfolios. So I thought maybe I should highlight that. And also perhaps the last point as well in how we can also strengthen transparency and accountability is through strengthening social accountability and follow-up mechanisms. As you are aware, as Auditor General, when we audit, we give recommendations which go through Parliament, and then it's up to Parliament now through the Treasury Minion for Ministry of Finance to implement those recommendations that Auditor General gives. But it will be interesting to see TIZ and other interested stakeholders to enhance follow-up mechanisms to ensure that recommendations that are given by Auditor General in different sectors that we audit, be it infrastructure, PPEs, so on and so forth, there is a strong social accountability accountability and follow-up mechanisms, one from the stakeholders and also the citizens who are fully participating to ensure that the goal of transparency and accountability initiative is achieved.
Here is a comment. Then we move to right to give his comments. There are some elements that touch on Tommy's work in TIZ, and that's kind of what he wants us to see. So we can start with giving an overall TIZ some of the comments.
From the first one, in terms of one access to so our work is both upstream and downstream. Upstream meaning we are working with structured institutions, government, private sector, but also there is a component of downstream, which includes community. And maybe that's where the issue is, and I'm sure Brian will address this. These agreements are signed in places where ordinary people find it difficult to access. First of all. So I think the issue is, yes, we appreciate that these are done publicly, but I think let's be deliberate and ensure that communities start to learn and appreciate these things and take interest. Because what we want to see is a situation where communities have the role to play in whatever projects that are going on. So yes, we commend what is happening, but I think let's expand it more and deliberately find ways of reaching out. And I know that this maybe will heavily fall on civil society because they're the ones that work closely with communities, but whatever the case, let's be deliberate and ensure that communities understand these processes, take interest, and then they start participating. I like the recommendation around paying attention to climate. I'm sure Tamika will handle that. We have a dedicated strategic focus area around climate, and I'm sure there is room to integrate those aspects. What we want is a comprehensive yet sustainable intervention. Partnerships from quality manual. Yeah, that is one of the priorities in our strategy. And yes, we are open, and I think we can further these conversations. But I like your angle of enhancing social accountability, because this is where communities are the role to play. And we move not towards ensuring that private sector and public sector are the only ones accountable. But I think we move to a position where there's mutual accountability. I think communities have responsibilities and rights, just like government and private sector. So the issue of integrating some of these approaches, there is more room. But specific responses, let me leave it to my colleagues that are in the thick and thin of these issues. Thank you very much for the question. Let me start, I think, with a very I'll refer the first question to only because of the impact too. We have done this specific question on project assessment. So one of them kind of is driving. If not, we can have better discussion. Because I'll distribute the assessment questions. And we go through those questions and see what are doing. And I think that's the best. Then from the winter general, we go that very good idea on I think that makes even our project have to generate tangible outcomes in terms of how done. So once we see the vulnerabilities that the risk areas, we'll consider your suggestion in terms of because I think that will sustain the impact beyond the project. That is something that is very important. Then on the follow-up action, I think this is something we have been working on actually for quite some time. Maybe for your interest, I will just first of all tell you that we are working on a change to the way we analyze and interpret reports. So looking forward to next year, we are going to publish a report which is very different. In that we are going to take stock of all the issues that are raised in the report, entirely all of them, and we will mark them by public institutions where those issues are housed, as well as the patient. So what we're trying to do is to identify the public institutions where we have more then type of work and categorize all of those issues. So we're using a more, instead of just going through what we're doing in the past, just running through the report and picking out the sensitive issues. But now what we're doing is more of the concept analysis of the report. That's taken us a bit more time because we are logging all the different in the entire report and categorizing by public institutions where the issues are moved, as well as the districts where they are mentioned and the types of issues. So it could be very comprehensive. What we're trying to do is to then map out the problematic public institutions, then we can target in terms of our institutions. So I think it will make more sense moving forward then to look at the recommendations with respect to those public institutions and then address the issue of follow-up. But my colleague, of course, strongly believes in this we give more details in terms of follow-up.
And thank you very much. And indeed, we're engaging those particular institutions in terms of how we can address those specific financial priorities of issues that have been raised. But also just to mention, beyond this project of FTAI, we also have another project called the CADA project. I'm sure you're aware of it. Yes. Which is funded by the French military through Interscience Initiative, which is looking at strengthening collaboration between science, supreme audit institutions, and civil society. So we've been working with Office of General, first of all, to develop a framework for citizen engagement with the Office of General, but also introducing new social accountability tools, such as citizen participatory audits. So these are actually based on performance audit. And perhaps in the future, we can use this particular analysis that we're doing here as one of the CPAs.
Thank you for those responses. Are there any other questions or comments, particularly from the one? Grading time. Going once. Twice. Of the silence means we are in a comfortable place. We will break off for tea because tea is ready, but before that, in the program, it indicates group photo. So before some of the segments, maybe guys. Okay, so we can all head out for group photo, then we come back for tea break, for about 15 minutes, and then we will commence with the meeting. Please note that at that point after tea break, we're going to have media in the room, and we also stop our this study is actually a 51 of the project. Thank you very much, and you're welcome.